They told you Star Wars was dead, but like Ahsoka in the world between worlds, it just keeps coming back. Hey guys, I'm one of the biggest Star Wars fans in the world. I know this because I have the Millennium Falcon tattooed on me. If you like Star Wars as much as I do, like and subscribe. I am so happy with the way that Ahsoka turned out. It's really a return to form to the Clone Wars and Rebels days, whenever they were really filling out the characters from the movies, making us more empathetic towards them. If you watch all of the animated shows, you get to know more motivations. It seems like Anakin is just kind of a whiny little baby if you just jump from the beginning of the Clone Wars to the end of the Clone Wars, but once you realize that he went through all of this stuff and you actually get to visualize all of the hardship, it makes more sense that with his life as a slave before he joined the Jedi Order and being able to overcome certain death multiple times led him down this dark path. Now you wouldn't know that unless you watched the Clone Wars with the movie. Same thing is going to apply with Ahsoka. It's a little bit easier to get if you've already watched Rebels. They eventually fill you in, and I think you connect to the characters by the end of the 8 episodes. Okay, let's get into the show. We start by meeting two new characters, Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, who are infiltrating a Republic ship. The soldiers don't believe that they're Jedi, and their suspicions turn out to be very correct. But it doesn't mean that they're Sith, it just means that they're not Jedi. They infiltrate this ship because they're mercenaries and they've been hired to help Morgan Elizabeth escape from Republic custody. They are extremely successful. After this, we meet our titular character, Ahsoka, played by Rosario Dawson. She isn't the sharp-tongued young Ahsoka that we know and love from Clone Wars. Now she's wiser and she sees the world for what it really is, and I think that Rosario Dawson does a great job of encapsulating that. We also find out that she's flying with a droid named Hugh Yang, who's going to become a very important and very lovable character throughout this series. They are collecting a star map from what seems like a very ancient temple. Unknowingly, this is going to cross paths with Baylan Skoll and Morgan Elizabeth because they have sent droids to collect this artifact as well. After Ahsoka dispatches them, she goes to meet up with Hera Syndulla, one of the best pilots in the series, but is now a general for the New Republic. Hera says, I don't know how to open it and I can't give you the resources to get it open, but I think that you know who you need to ask. Ahsoka's former Padawan, Sabine Wren. Sabine was not a Jedi in Rebels, so it's a little bit of a shock to us that this Mandalorian badass is now a Jedi, and at one point was Ahsoka's Padawan. Reluctantly, they go to Lothal, where Sabine is a hero, but very reluctantly. After some bickering, Sabine does the angsty teen thing, which is very normal for Sabine, and she takes the star map to her apartment, which is Ezra's old hideout at the top of the radio tower on Lothal. She does manage to open this artifact, but right after, Shin Hati shows up, beats her in a lightsaber duel, and then takes the artifact, leaving her to have a lot of explaining to do to Ahsoka. Baylan, Shin, and Morgan Elizabeth now have the star map to Thrawn. That's a big problem, but it also means that there's a chance to get to Ezra Bridger. Ezra is a very powerful Jedi that was just coming up. Ezra had to sacrifice himself to defeat Thrawn to make sure that Thrawn wasn't able to continue the Empire's mission after the death of the Emperor. Wren is being her long-haired angsty self, and she's recovering in the hospital. She mentions that there were droids, so Ahsoka goes back to the apartment, finds a droid, and they use the droid's hard drives to get clues on who these mysterious Force users are. They go to a Morgan Elizabeth Corellian shipyard. When they get there, they realize that something's off. They're making a hyperdrive that's way too big for any Republic ship. Whenever they notice this, the Empire loyalists attack, and Ahsoka has to do her Ahsoka thing. Hera chases down the hyperdrive that's being transported away, and just before it's able to jump to hyperspace, and after a classic back and forth between her and Chopper, they're able to get a tracker on it. You find out that this hyperdrive is going to a ship called the Eye of Sion, a massive hyperspace ring that would be able to take you to another galaxy, you know, maybe like a Purgle, the space whale that took Thrawn to this other galaxy. Sabine Wren cuts her hair, and it seems that she's going to come on the mission kind of with a hope that maybe she will get to continue her Jedi training, and definitely with a huge hope that she's going to get to find Ezra Bridger, who was one of her best friends. We see Sabine training, and it does look like she has actually been through at least the basics of lightsaber training. However, she cannot use the Force at all. She can't even move a little cup. On the other side of things, we find out that Hera's having no luck with the New Republic government, especially because of this guy right here. He's a jerk. And this leads them to kind of just go in alone. And whenever they get there, they find the giant hyperspace ring, the Eye of Sion. It's way too much for them. They get attacked by the heavy guns and they have to crash land. It all ends up being a fight on the ground in the woods. And you really see where Sabine is in her Jedi journey at this point. The fight seems to be going well until Shin and Merrick show up. Ahsoka is very easily able to dispatch Merrick, but Sabine is not able to handle Shin. Shin notices that Sabine isn't able to use the Force, and to be honest, is just miles behind her in the race to become a Jedi Master or a competent Force user. Ahsoka, being mission first, heads to where Baylan and Morgan Elizabeth are instead of going to help Sabine, and she finds out that they are at this temple and they are looking for the coordinates to where Thrawn ended up. Ahsoka and Baylan get into an epic fight. Ahsoka is eventually beaten and pushed to the edge of a cliff. That's whenever Sabine and Shin show back up. Sabine hesitates for just long enough to let Baylan push her off of the cliff. But it turns out that Ahsoka doesn't die. She's transported again to the world between worlds, which we've seen in Rebels. Who is she greeted with? Our boy, Anakin. Hera, her son Jace, and a squadron of fighters show up without permission. They see that a battle's happened, but they don't know what's happened, so they're just looking everywhere and patrolling. It turns out that Sabine actually went willingly with Baylan and Morgan Elizabeth so that she could have a better chance of finding Ezra. Ahsoka is in the world between worlds with Anakin, and I've seen a lot of theories on Anakin in the war between worlds. I think I figured it out, and I don't really care what y'all think. I'm just pretty sure I'm right. It was Anakin's destiny to bring balance to the Force, and they explain this more deeply in the Clone Wars. There are the children of Mortis, which is the father, son, and the daughter. The son represents the dark, the daughter represents the light, and the father represents the balance, just trying to keep them in check. It's Anakin's destiny to one day bring balance to this Force by becoming these gods of Mortis, right? Initially, he rejects this, but I think he has become the gods of Mortis. If you look at the story arc of Anakin, he's initially a very good, pure-hearted soul in episode 1. And in episode 2, he's still that, but he's starting to get cloudy. He's starting to get into the gray area. By 3, he dips completely into the dark side. Because he has this arc of being in every single stage of the light and the dark, he has become the gods of Mortis all in himself. The point of the Force that I think is lost on a lot of people is that you're not all good and you're not all bad. You can't be all light and you can't be all dark. There are always positive and negative outcomes to everyone's actions and positive and negative reasons for those actions. And in this time that Ahsoka spends in the War Between Worlds, I think she learns more about Anakin and the journey that he went through from being a young slave on Tatooine to being the strongest Jedi to being the strongest Sith. She learns a lot about herself, that she was a youngling that was chosen to be the Padawan of the greatest Jedi of all time. And that Jedi at the time didn't have the luxury of teaching her the finer nuances of being a Jedi. He had to teach her to survive because he couldn't stand the idea of losing anyone else that he cared about. But for a long time, that made Ahsoka feel that she wasn't a complete Jedi, that she wasn't everything that she wanted to be, that she was just this ultimate warrior. The Eye of Sion had gotten away and is now arriving at its destination, a faraway planet in a faraway galaxy called Peridia, the ancient homeworld of the Dathmiri. Darth Maul was a male Dathmiri, so they have a lot of history in the Star Wars universe. When they get there, they find Grand Admiral Thrawn. And Thrawn has made a very powerful alliance with 3 Night Sisters. And those Night Sisters have been sending messages through the Force to Morgan Elizabeth. And that's how all of this has come together. Back in the normal galaxy, Hera's in trouble because not only did she break the rules, she also didn't come back with any results. So now she's kind of up a creek. Ahsoka uses all of her powers to figure out what the next step is. And that step is to use the space whales, the Purgles. If she could use use this Force-animal connection that Ezra could use in Rebels, and then she could use the space whales to take them to wherever they took Ezra and Thrawn. On Peridea, Baylan tells Sabine that she can go and look for Ezra, and she sets off on her wolf dog. It's pretty awesome. The wolf dog's pretty awesome. What seems like not that long of searching, she comes across Ezra, and they're finally reunited. However, this was all a plan of Thrawn, that now he's gonna send his mercenaries, Baylan and Shin, to go and find Ezra, because he still has a vendetta. It's been years that he's been on this planet and not been able to get back to the mission at hand. So he has to get revenge against Ezra. While searching, Baylan seems distant. He starts to sense that somewhere on this planet, there's a power stronger than anything that he's ever imagined. But you can tell that something is changing. The Great Mothers, the Dathomiri Night Sisters that Thrawn has aligned with, sense that Ahsoka is coming now that she's inside of her Purgle, and that leads Thrawn to start doing his whole Thrawn thing. He starts to study. He's smarter than every other opponent that he's ever gone against, and he finds out that Ahsoka is the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, so he readies his defenses. So Hera's in trouble now for going to help Ahsoka and Sabine. So at the tribunal, she's giving it just as hard as she's getting it, but it's not going well until we get a cameo by our boy C-3PO. 3PO comes in and says, Leia Organa authorized the mission, and I'm sorry that she didn't have time, but she's actually in charge of the Defense Council. In our galaxy far, far away, from our galaxy far, far away, Sabine and Ezra are really starting to reconnect. However, Sabine is being a little cryptic, but that's kind of normal for her, so Ezra doesn't really take it personally, even though he has a lot of questions. Baylan and Shin make an alliance with the local bandit. There are other species of sentient life, so they set off to attack Ezra and his band of little turtle people. And Ahsoka and Hu Yang are still inside of our whales. Whenever they get to the planet, Morgan Elizabeth has set out tons and tons of mines, and they start to attack the whales. But Ahsoka doesn't like that. It probably doesn't jive well with the deal that she has with the whales. And it's around this time that Ezra and Sabine get attacked by Baylan and Shin. And we find out that Ezra doesn't want to use a lightsaber. At least he doesn't want to use his old lightsaber. He's only going to use the Force and just hand-to-hand combat. They're doing well against the bandits and Shin because Baylan hasn't joined the fight. He's decided that he's going to go search for this ancient power that he's been sensing ever since he got to this planet. And that's whenever Thrawn's stormtroopers show up and tip the battle in Shin's favor. Ahsoka finally is able to get there after a final battle with Baylan. Thrawn realizes that he's lost, pulls out his troopers, and leaves Shin on the planet. Ezra's building a lightsaber because he knows that they don't have a lot of time, so he's in a hurry. Whenever he's doing it with Hu Yang, keep in mind Hu Yang is 25,000 years old, and in that time, the only thing that he really did was teach younglings, and especially teach younglings to make lightsabers. No, this won't work, and this won't work, and Hu Yang's like, who are you talking to? And Ezra doesn't know, honestly, he doesn't know all of that. And he says, no, this piece won't work, I need a piece like this. And he goes, it makes sense because your master liked his lightsabers like that. And this is another emphasis on the master-apprentice relationship. The master-apprentice relationship has been very important throughout Star Wars. You have Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, you have Obi-Wan and Anakin, you have Anakin and Ahsoka, you have Obi-Wan and Luke, you had Kanan and Ezra, and now you have Ahsoka and Sabine. These are very strong bonds. So they do a full-on assault towards Thrawn and his Star Destroyers. And they find out that Morgan Elizabeth has been indoctrinated into the Night Sisters. She has been given more power and a blade that can fight Jedi. She squares off against Ahsoka, and they have a very Ronin-like fight. One of the best fights that I've seen in a long time in Star Wars. We also have the problem that the Dathomiri are turning the stormtroopers into zombies. So every time you kill them, they fall down, they get back up. So they have an endless supply of troops. And to be honest, they don't get there in time. Sabine and Ezra have to use the Force to force push Ezra onto the ship. And right when it's Sabine's turn, she realizes that she can't leave her master because she has developed that strong bond as well. They race to try to get to the hyperspace ring in time so that they don't get left behind. But again, they're unsuccessful. They are forced to start building a home on their new planet in a galaxy far, far away from a galaxy that's far, far away. We see Shin go to a bandit camp where she obviously expects leadership. We see Valen standing on a statue of the gods of Mortis, looking off into the distance where you can faintly see a blinking light. And the very last thing we see is Ezra pulls one out of his old Rebels playbook, disguises himself as a stormtrooper, and finds a way to reunite with Hera. Then that's it for season 1. Okay guys, you already know I'm one of the biggest Star Wars fans out there. I'm gonna say this is a real return to form. The Filoni Star Wars is the best Disney Star Wars. If it can't be George, it needs to be Dave. Dave Filoni is one of the many people, but one of the most important people responsible for the Clone Wars, Rebels, The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and now Ahsoka. He gets it, and I can't wait to see how he builds and connects all of these shows to eventually, hopefully, getting the Filoni Star Wars movie, which will bring all of these storylines together and all of these characters that we will now know and love. You won't have to build their backstories because we've seen it. We've gotten years of their backstories. Anyways, can't wait for season 2. Hey everyone, I'm stuck in this box until we get to 10,000 subscribers. Please help me get out of the box. Please. Please.